welcome back. So, like I said, the topic on about Osias that has to do with the Prophet Osias has two subtopics. So the first one is the unfaithful wife and the faithful husband. So the second subtopic is this particular one you're watching right now, the unfaithfulness of Israel and faithfulness of God. So this topic will just highlight more on the unfaithfulness of Israel, what they did wrong. So it's actually going to talk more on, the topic is going to be more on the sin committed by the Israelites and how God is still faithful to them, right? So let's get right into it. Alright, so through Osias' marriage to Gomer, a promiscuous woman, you already know the story. God detailed the ruin that awaited Israel because of its sin and unfaithfulness. Alright, so through their marriage, God already showed what's going to happen to Israel. You saw how Gomer suffered that Osias had to go and buy her back, right? So Osias' grace and love toward Gomer illustrate God's relationship to Israel, right? Israel loved other gods, yet God remained faithful to his people. Okay, so Osias' opening complaint against Israel began with a threefold indictment. So what Osias complained about is that he complained about the priests in Israel, he complained about the prophets, and he also complained about people, that they are guilty of violating God's spiritual standards for holy living. So the priest, the prophet, and the people are guilty of violating God's spiritual standards. They are guilty of violating God's law. When you check the Ten Commandments, it says they shall not worship idol, right? So these three folks are the people that what's it called? Osias was sent to: the priest, the prophet, and the people, for violating God's spiritual standards for holy living. Alright, so God has a charge involving Israel's violation of its basic covenant with the Lord. Israel already has a covenant with God, right? And they are not meant to break it. So Israel is charged with infidelity, disloyalty, and a virtual failure to know God in their lives. I'm going to say something very quickly. It's very easy for you to mix up the messages of each prophet, right? So what I'm going to advise is that we have three prophets. After this particular topic, I'll be teaching on Isaiah. Now pick two out of these prophets, right? Pick two out of them and then write under them the message. Just highlight that for so that I can easily remember. Write the message. What is the message of Osias? Write the message of Amos. You get? Just pick two. You don't have to read the three. Okay? Just pick two out of them. I know that in your exam, most times they bring either like probably two out of the three, Amos, Osias, or they bring Isaiah and Amos. You get what I'm trying to say? So pick two out of that and then make sure you bring out the sin of each the Israelite in the two prophets ministry, so that you not miss it, or so that you know distinctively that okay, the truth is that their sin actually look alike, but at least so that you will not make mistake, because the person that is marking your skill will actually know if you are not sure of the detail of the information you wrote down. So you have to be so sure. All right, so let me get back into it. So Israel is charged with infidelity, disloyalty, and a virtual failure to know God in their lives. So it's still part of violating God's spiritual standards. They are not faithful. That's infidelity. They are not loyal to God who saved them. Alright. So rather than reproducing God's attribute of truth and faithfulness, God's people were false and unfaithful. They were false and unfaithful. Alright. So Israel had been schooled in the knowledge of God. They know this thing. You get? And his standards as well as his goodness. But alas, they demonstrated no trace of them in their lives. So Israel, they know. They've been with God now. From the journey of Egypt and everything. So they know these things. But they didn't even demonstrate like they know. They know how God rescued them. I don't even expect them to still go and then be worshipping idol. That's very wrong, alright? So had they truly known him, it would have been reflected in their appropriation of God's covenant standard for their lives. Therefore, so sorry, I need to quickly delete this. Okay. Alright. So sorry for that. Okay, let's get back. Alright. So therefore, they must face the consequences of their own actions. Alright, God birthed Israel And through the centuries, he nourished, instructed, and protected the nation. But Israel proved to be an unfaithful wife who insulted God by act of immorality and idolatry. Okay, so the list began with cursing or false swearing in God's name. So now let's say that they ask you to narrate how Israel is unfaithful to God. I mean, your first paragraph should, introduce us to Israelites, introduce us to Osias, and then mention briefly the sins of the Israelites and the punishment. So in your body paragraph, you now begin to expatiate on those sins. Like I did, I already mentioned earlier that they actually violated the standard of God. So now I'm trying to pick those things they did, So the list began with cursing or false swearing in God's name. So the Israelites swore in God's name. A violation of the third commandment. What did God say in the third commandment? He said that we should not swear. Alright, don't call the name of your God in vain. Remember. Alright. Also, they have committed spiritual adultery by their devotion to Baal. That shall not commit adultery, isn't it? They devoted their life to Baal. That's spiritual adultery. That's another sin. So when you're explaining that, you should explain, okay? You should break it down, give instance, okay? So the Canaanites stormed God, who supposedly brought them the much needed rain for their crops. Now, talking about how they are devoted to Baal, they were worshiping the Canaanites storm god, and who, according to research, brought them the rain they needed for their crops, which is also violating the first commandment. Alright, so Osias also condemned Israel for its idolatrous behavior. He pointed out first of all those most responsible for Israel's degraded condition: the priests and prophets who have misled their own people. Alright, so because the people willingly follow the priests in their apostasy and degraded lifestyle, God will punish Israelite society in general. So now I'm talking about how God is going to do. God already said this is their sin, violating my commandment. The priest, the prophet misled the people, and the people also bought into it. Alright, so God says that because they willingly follow the priest in their apostasy and degraded lifestyle, God will punish Israelite society in general. He will punish the priest, punish the prophet, and the people alike. Indeed, all Israel stood guilty of not only deserting God in their feigned faith. They acted like they had faith in God. Meanwhile, they deserted God. Okay, so indeed, all Israel stood guilty of not only deserting God in their feigned faith in Him and in the desecration of His standards, but they have entered into the idolatrous worship of other so-called gods and practiced the debased religious rites associated with them. So Osias exposed Israel's unfaithfulness and hypocrisy through lies and deceit. The nation had pretended to worship Jehovah while practicing idolatry. So this is just expatiating on all the point listed earlier. Alright, so Osias concluded his oracle with a strong and stern warning of the consequences of Israel's spiritual adulteries. So Osias concluded his message, oracle means a message, with a strong and stern warning of the consequences of Israel's spiritual adulteries. Osias said, "He," that's Israel, "shall not return into the land of Egypt, but the Assyrian shall be his king, because he refused to return." So that's one of their punishment. Please don't forget. Okay, don't mix up Amos. Remember during Amos, I told you that God said He's going to destroy 10th of them. He's going to decimate them with fire. He's going to burn them with fire. But this particular one, God said they are going to be taken on exile. So don't mix it up, right? So Egypt is a symbol for the new type of exile Israel will face in Assyria. You saw what they faced in Egypt, right? That's what will happen under Assyrian king. With the collapse and capture of Israel's political leadership, the king of Assyria would control the nation's government. Thus, Israel would have no king because the Israelites refused to repent. Their bondage at the hands of Assyria would be far more severe and last longer. Will be severe and last longer than their time of slavery in Egypt. Israel flaunted God's love, took for granted God's mercy and compassion, ignored the many warnings of judgment, and deserved to be annihilated. But God's great love for His covenant people would not allow Him to abandon Israel. So Israel flaunted God's love, and God already said He's going to punish them through the Assyrian king. However, God's great love for his covenant people will not allow him to abandon Israel. So he tempers his chastening with compassion and covenant love. He knows that his punishment will result in Israel's restoration and redemption. So God still delivered them from the hand of the Assyrian, hoping that after that deliverance, they are going to come back to God, just like the way Osias brought Gomer back into the house. And after that time, I believe she remained faithful. So that's all about Osias the prophet. If you have questions, please drop in the comment section, and please like this video if you enjoyed the class, and also share it with your friends. And lastly, kindly subscribe. Just click on the subscribe button. Thank you. Bye.